Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would talk about this little subject and this little news story that I thought would be very particularly interesting. And for those of you that know me or know my channel, you know that I almost never commentate on news stories or politics or anything like that because I think that a lot of the times that they try to brainwash you into something, and I think that it's just not really that worth that much of energy to talk about it because I think that they're just really oftentimes trying to brainwash you or push a certain narrative. But I do want to commentate, every once in a while on a news story that I at least find interesting or to where a lesson can kind of be learned from this, or I can kind of put things in their proper perspective. Because, of course, especially since this was, unfortunately, a death that was involved between that of a young Caucasian boy and a young black boy in that of America. Of course, there's going to be a lot of people coming from both sides that, of course, come with racialized agendas or certain people that, of course, kind of want to maybe put things in their improper perspectives to make things look better on one side. But for those of you that did not end up hearing about the news, this young boy, I believe on the right, Austin Metcalf in the blue shirt, at least I believe that it was this gentleman. These two are twin brothers, so it's a little bit hard to tell. But from what I've seen, it was the man on the right here, Austin Metcalf, and apparently the other man, the young black boy that, of course, is being charged by the name of Carmelo Anthony, spelled almost exactly like Carmelo Anthony from the NBA, but instead of a C with the first part of the name, it's a K. Apparently, Austin Metcalf, he found Carmelo Anthony, the young black boy, same age as him, by the way, both 17. Apparently, he found him under the track meet tent of his particular school during a rain delay, and he stated that he needed to move because it was not his school tent. And apparently, long story short, Carmelo Anthony got to the point where he said, if you touch me, or make me move, then, you're going to see what happens. Austin Metcalf, and I think even his brother, whatever his name is, he ended up, they ended up trying to make Carmelo Anthony move. Carmelo Anthony apparently pulled a knife or had a knife, and he ended up stabbing it right in his chest into his heart. And of course, eventually he died of his wounds. Very unfortunate story. Now, what I will state is this, is that I don't know either of these guys personally or any of their families or anything like that. I was not a witness to any of these events, so I can't tell you for certainty what ended up happening. But a lot of people are going to try to tell you for certain what ended up happening because they want the story to look a certain way. So you have certain people that are stating that, for example, that Carmelo Anthony, that this kid was bullied by Austin Metcalf or something like that, and that they had a history. I mean, you never know, but I've not heard anything like that. Maybe it's because the news wants to put it in a certain way, but to be quite honest with you, I doubt it. But we're gonna go with the video as it goes along because I think that there's a great lesson to be learned from both sides of this. But anyways, let's get into it, and we're gonna watch this video by WFAA News. Let's see what ends up happening here.
Tonight, a Frisco woman is living every mother's worst nightmare. Her family and the entire district are grieving the tragic death of a brother, son, and student athlete. Police say another student stabbed and killed 17-year-old Austin Metcalf during a track meet this morning at Frisco's Cookendall Stadium. The suspect, who's also 17 and attended a competing school, is now charged with murder. Investigators.
And listen, when we talk about this kid, Carmelo Anthony here, just doing a little bit of background research, this kid had pictures of himself holding AK-47s or guns, on his Facebook or whatever it may be, holding up the middle finger. And of course, certain people may retort what they say, well, the Metcalf brothers, of course, were also found with guns, I believe on their Facebook. So why were they not, kind of put in a similar light? Because when we talk about it, more than likely, this is especially a huge problem, let's be real, within a lot of the minority communities. Now, of course, it's not like, certain Caucasian kids, of course, have not had their problem with gun violence, of course, shooting up the schools. But the point being is that if we're just going to be real about it, Carmelo Anthony, from what I also researched, he had a history of fights in schools and confrontations. On top of that, he brought a knife to a track meet. I have no idea why you would bring a knife to a track meet unless you have some sort of history with these people and you believe that something is going to happen. And I've not heard anything from anybody that that these two kids had history. So what that tells me is that this kid, that he was always prepared for something to pop off, or he was looking for trouble in the first place. And the pictures on Facebook with the AK-47, and let's just be real, him probably worshiping the thug life or the gangster lifestyle. Huge problem in a lot of the minority communities within that of America, which is killing a lot of young boys and killing a lot of young girls and, killing really a whole lot of people in general over, trying to prove your masculinity or who's harder or who's more real, all this sort of shit. That shit will get you killed. I had a friend, who's about 40 years old. He's from the Bronx, New York, and he has a son that I believe is about 17, 18 years old. Puerto Rican family, but, even they kind of got caught up a little bit at times in that thug life. And his son, he ended up getting caught, in the gangs a little bit and in the Crips a little bit. Well, one day, two people jump him on the train and they end up beating the shit out of him. He ends up wanting, to fight. He ends up wanting to get back at them. And I told him because I had a conversation with him myself because I'm, good with the family. But, I ended up saying, just let that shit go. Because if you don't let certain shit like that go, you're going to end up dead. You're going to end up with a bullet in your head or, in this case, of course, a knife in your chest or something like that. This is a great lesson on both sides that sometimes you just got to let shit go because you got to realize how valuable that you are as a person. Because if not, it takes one bad situation sometimes to fuck up your life forever. In this case, in Austin Metcalf's case, he's dead forever. And of course, in Carmelo Anthony's case, he pretty much has ruined his whole entire life. Even if he doesn't get life in prison, he's at the very least, in my view, no doubt about it, going to get about 20 to 35 years in prison for at least manslaughter, for when it comes down to it. So very unfortunate from both sides. Very unfortunate. But, anyway, but let's rewind this a little bit.
17-year-old Austin Metcalf during a track meet this morning at Frisco's Cookendall Stadium. The suspect, who's also 17 and attended a competing school, is now charged with murder. Investigators say...
And let me also state this. You have many members, let's be real, of, the super duper pro-black movements that are trying to make this kid seem like he was this fantastic scholar. And apparently from what I hear, he was a good student and all that stuff. But from the stuff that I hear about him getting into the confrontations and all that stuff, people are trying to label him as this guy that just completely acted out in self-defense. I'm sorry, I'm just not buying it. Not with the history, not with the pictures that I see, and I'm sorry, but more than likely this was a kid that probably worshipped the thug life, as is a huge problem within that of a lot of the minority communities. Now, of course, Austin Metcalf apparently tried to make him move, which in my view was a mistake. And is it possible that Austin Metcalf, that maybe he had some bully tendencies or that maybe he was trying to bully Carmelo Anthony a little bit? Maybe. But at the end of the day, does that give the other person the right to necessarily stab in the chest? No, not necessarily. And, even if, let's just say there was a history of bullying and, let's just say, for example, for, all intents and purposes, let's just say, for example, that Metcalf was bullying Carmelo Anthony within a history. You can't stab people in the chest and almost kill them because that's going to fuck up your life for the rest of your life now. But, when people try to state overall that this kid acted in self-defense, I'm sorry, I'm just not buying it. They were under a track tent. The kids told him to move multiple times. He had the opportunity to move, not saying that, maybe Metcalf was 100% right in telling him to move. Maybe he could have just let him stay under that of the tents. But I mean, the point being is this, is that you had the opportunity to move. That was the first thing. And then apparently he tried to move your bag or move you. I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm just not seeing enough for legitimate self-defense. And I don't think that the court is either. In order for there to be legitimate self-defense, you have to have a very, very legitimate reason to believe that your life was in danger. And I'm sorry, but this just doesn't come across to me as one of those cases.
A fight broke out between the two.
And of course, many people have been comparing this to the Kyle Rittenhouse case. We're going to talk about that as it goes along as well.
Ended with Austin's death. Tonight, we have team coverage on the investigation and the vigil that just wrapped. Austin's mom and twin brother sat down with Tiffany Liu.
Tonight on a Wednesday night, Austin Metcalf would typically have been here at his church's youth group, but instead his friends, family, and loved ones gathered to grieve his loss together.
We're going to go to the vigil tonight.
When you lose one of the most important people in your life,
So many kids loved him.
comfort can be found with the...
Now, what I'm personally going to state is this about Mr. Austin Metcalf. Now, once again, I don't know this son whatsoever. I don't know him. So everything that I'm stating is a possibility. It's not anything that is confirmed because I don't know enough about this story. I'm not a person that, state something with the confirmation when I don't know a whole lot of the details. But the fact that Austin Metcalf, told him to move and then apparently tried to forcibly move him, what that tells me is either one of two things. Either in that moment, Carmelo Anthony was, confrontational enough to where Austin Metcalf felt that he had to show some sort of masculinity in order to get them the hell out of there or live up to his words, which can be very dangerous because, of course, certain people, they don't give a fuck about their lives, so they're definitely not going to give a fuck about yours. And in my view, more than likely, that's probably what the situation was about. But that being stated, this whole situation could have been avoided had Austin Metcalf either got an adult or a teacher or something like that, or something else would have happened. Sometimes, when someone, you got to realize when someone tells you that if you touch me, see what happens, or if this, goes on, they're trying to get into something because they're looking for trouble. Now, not always. Sometimes people say that because they are acting in legitimate self-defense. But, I've been involved in road rage incidents or certain things to where people overall have told me or they've stated certain things like, get out of here before you get hurt or certain things like that. And you know why? That person is looking for a fight. If you ever get in a road rage incident or if you ever get in an incident with someone on the sidewalk and they say, watch where you're fucking going, or hey, do you have a problem or something like that, that person may very possibly be a little bit mentally unstable. And you never know what they have on them. You don't know if they have a knife. You don't know if they have, a taser, a gun, or whatever it may be. So 99% of the times, it's best to avoid conflict, at least, a major competition like that, especially with a stranger, than what it is to get involved, because you just never know when a situation like this is going to happen. You may say something and that person backs off. You may get in a fight with them. You may win. You may get your ass kicked. You may get shot. You may get killed. So that's why, once again, when it comes to a situation like this, it's better just to leave shit alone and, make that person believe that they're tougher than you or all sort of stuff, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, it ended up costing one man's life.
Those who love him.
Just doesn't make any sense.
Megan Metcalf got the call this morning.
Now, what I will state is this once again, is it possible that Austin Metcalf maybe felt entitled or that he was a bit of a bully in his high school because he was a top tier athlete and, more than likely he was very decently popular? It's very possible, because when you talk about certain parents, whenever a kid dies like this, they always talk about, oh, my son was the best person ever, or, he was an upstanding Christian, all sort of stuff. I mean, listen, and all that could be true. I'm not stating that none of that was true, but what I am stating is this. Oftentimes, parents, they don't even know how their sons or how their daughters or how their kids are acting at school. Half of these parents don't even know what the hell is going on with their kids. They don't know what drugs they're doing. They don't know, whether they're having unprotected sex somewhere. They don't know, what's going on. Then eventually they find out that their 14-year-old daughter is pregnant. So, I mean, a lot of these parents don't know what the hell is going on, or they don't truly know their kids or how they act outside of the home. But once again, I don't know the Metcalf brothers, or I don't know this family enough, so I can't commentate on that. But, is it possible that there was a little bit of entitlement and a bully type of mindset from Austin Metcalf? Maybe. Maybe that was the reason why he thought that he, had the ability to move that of whatever his name was, Carmelo Anthony. Maybe that was the reason why. But once again, you have to learn how to avoid these situations because it can cost you your life.
Because the kid was mad. My son is not here anymore. And I don't understand it.
Her 17-year-old son, Austin Metcalf, was at a UIL track meet at Kirkendall Stadium. Police say there was an altercation between two Frisco ISD students.
I got a phone call from Hunter,
Austin's identical twin,
screaming that Austin had been stabbed.
Megan beat the ambulance to the hospital and saw him get taken.
Now, according to the story, what his brother says is that, his brother tried to go there first, and then, apparently the other brother eventually, secondly, tried to get around him to move him. Now, what I'll personally state is this. That, in my view, was not the best decision. It's best just to leave it alone. Because at the end of the day, he's under your track 10. I mean, is it really going to harm anything? It's possible that the kid was friends with somebody else, or that, something else was going on. I mean, I get it. You may not want a school rival or something like that under your tent. But once it gets to the point to where a person says, if you touch me, see what happens, that's when you got to let that shit go. But... that's why I said, that's why I almost wonder, like, was there a little bit of an entitlement or bullying situation from Austin Metcalf? Because would it really have been that harmful for, Carmelo Anthony to remain under the track tent? Now, maybe it was. I don't know. Maybe they don't want them, talking to each other, with the track meet because, a possible competition, or maybe there was personal belongings. I mean, the mother, she ended up stating that he did the right thing, of course, which of course she's going to say because she's the mother. But I mean, because there's personal belongings there. Well, here's my question. What personal belongings are really under a track tent? Like, are people's purses or wallets there? Is money there? Is information there? Or was it pretty much just their equipment? So, I mean, that's the question that I kind of have to ask there. So the fact that Austin Metcalf felt like he had to do that once again tells me a couple of things. Either A, that he had to prove his masculinity, or maybe that he did have a little bit of an entitlement issue, or that he could have been a possible bully. But either way, Carmelo Anthony, of course, he ended up doing a majorly wrong act, both against, the other kid and for himself, because now he fucked up his life for good.
He was the most amazing kid. Oh, so smart. He had college football guys looking at him to play in college. His goal was to play in college.
While we were talking to Mom,
Just to put your arms wrap around a support.
Austin's brother
This is Hunter. Did you want to talk to him? Hey.
came outside. Hunter Metcalf was there when it happened.
I tried to whip around as fast as I could, but I didn't see the stab.
Now, according to the original story, what this person says right here, the brother, of course, says that this kid was talking reckless under our tent. And I believe him. Because the kid that Carmelo Anthony comes across as, no offense, but, like I said, with the confrontations that I've heard a multitude of times, there was a girl in the news that was a fellow student of his that said that she was surprised that, he ended up taking someone's life, but that he had been in a multitude of confrontations and fights in his school. And these kids were not from the same school. So what that tells me is that this was not just a single bullying situation, at least more than likely, but that more than likely Carmelo Anthony was a kid that always felt that he had to prove his masculinity, and he was more than likely trying to be about that thug life. And that shit is dangerous, man. That shit will leave you right in the big slammer. So you got to let that shit go. But when it comes down to, so once again, if I had to guess what happened, more than likely Austin Metcalf, he felt that, he needed to do what was best for the team, or that he needed to prove his masculinity. He probably was talking a bit reckless, and Austin Metcalf probably thought that, I'm not going to take that you need to get the hell out of here. Right. But unfortunately, it ended up costing you your life. So like I said, whenever you meet a person like that, what that means is that they're a little bit mentally unstable.
But then I look at my brother, and then I'm not going to talk about the rest. So that's just what I saw. And I try to help him.
From the day they were born 17 years ago,
Now, what people will try to do to compare is that they'll say, well, why is Kyle Rittenhouse not being put under similar criticism? Because when you take a look at the Kyle Rittenhouse case, Kyle Rittenhouse, I believe that it was in Missouri or wherever it was, I can't remember. There was a raid going on throughout the whole entire town where fire and arson was being committed and other shit was going on. So during that time, that was a high threatened situation. Kyle Rittenhouse was completely minding his own business, running down the street. There was 2 or 3 gentlemen that believed that they needed to try and go after Kyle Rittenhouse. I believe that they ended up pushing him, and I think that he ended up even trying to get back up and avoid it, but then they pushed him down again, going after him and even trying to hit him with a skateboard. That was a complete self-defense situation, because that is an environment where anything could be happening. You don't know what type of fucking people are out there. If they're willing to raid shit and if they're willing to commit arson, you might have fucking murderers out there. So that's why, people are trying to compare this to the Kyle Rittenhouse case. No, Kyle Rittenhouse got off, and he should have got off. It was 100% self-defense. I feel no sympathy towards the people that ended up getting, unfortunately, killed in that situation, because at the end of the day, you ended up doing something that you shouldn't have. And if you would have just completely left him alone, he ended up completely avoiding it the first time, I believe. And then the second time around, he ended up shooting him. So I mean, it just is what it is. But when you talk about the situation, even though Austin Metcalf, in my view, should have not tried to move him, a part of the reason why, of course, is because I don't know how much damage it really would have done to really keep him under the tent. But then on top of that, it's very obvious that this kid, that he was looking for trouble anyway. First of all, you have a knife in your backpack. Who has a knife in their backpack at a track meet, especially against a boy that is at opposite schools? So people, you have these people overall that are stating that, oh, this kid has a history of bullying him and all sorts of stuff. I mean, maybe. You never know, because, I mean, maybe they met at track or something. I don't know. But the fact that I've heard that Carmelo Anthony was in a multitude of confrontations at his other school tells me that he more than likely was always looking for trouble. and that eventually that this was bound to happen someday. This kid was looking for someone overall pretty much to stab or somebody to kill.
4 minutes older, was Hunter's best friend.
He knew how much I loved him, how much I do for him. Anything, I do anything for him.
They ran together, played football together. They had that twin sense only twins would understand.
It's just really heartbreaking not to see him next year on the field.
Hunter never imagined the day he and Austin would be apart.
This is going to be really hard.
In Frisco, I'm Tiffany Liu.
So tragic. We've learned there will be counselors at Frisco Memorial, where Austin was a student, and at Centennial, where the suspect attended. Matt Howerton heard from students and parents there and found out this teen suspect had a future on the football field until today.
This, the video 17-year-old Carmelo Anthony wanted everyone to see. A highlight reel of him playing football for Centennial High in Frisco, something colleges watched.
Carmelo Anthony, class of 2025, Centennial High School, Frisco, Texas.
The teen proudly writing online he'd been offered several scholarships to play at various schools. But those dreams deflated Wednesday. Anthony charged with murder after police say he stabbed Austin Metcalf to death, another athlete from within Frisco.
Very unfortunate. And even if, and this is why I also state that, this is why I also state that this kid was more than likely just looking for somebody to kill or take his anger out on. Because if you truly believe that your life was a threat and that you and this kid allegedly had a past, which I don't believe whatsoever, why would you even go under the tent in the first place, where you know damn well that more than likely they're going to say something if you allegedly have a history? So that's bullshit. These kids more than likely did not have a history. More than likely it was a first time meeting. So I mean, it just is what it is. And if they did have history, then him going under the tent, what that means is that he was trying to instigate something because he was looking for someone to kill.
ISD at the district track meet following a fight.
I got the alleged suspect in handcuffs right now, detained.
Police swarming the scene. From the sky, we saw them collecting evidence at the stadium. Metcalf later dying at the hospital.
There are two families that got impacted. And their parents will be thinking that they're coming back by tonight, right? And all these things happened.
Parents picking up their students from Centennial Wednesday in disbelief.
Can't even imagine thinking about that, how their parents going through right now.
Students consumed by the news, many talking about it as they left class for the day. This sophomore telling us she knew Anthony.
To take someone's life is just like a different level, and it's like disgusting to me, honestly.
A motive not clear.
Now that was the girl, even though that they didn't show it, that was the same girl that said that he had been in a multitude of fights. So once again, what that tells me is that that kid, that he was confrontational, that he was always looking to prove his manhood and his masculinity. And this is a very big problem within the minority community, in that of America, unfortunately, to where they believe that they always have to prove their masculinity through the quote unquote thug life, or, being as ghetto as possible. And that shit will, that shit brings you no future and no success.
Wednesday night, Frisco PD still investigating, with the future on the gridiron in the balance. Many wondering why.
Nothing is an excuse for doing such a criminal act, I would say.
Well, if the kid really thought that his life was in danger, then I get it. But as you can see with the tent right there, you have way more than enough room in order to move out of the way. So this kid overall, he was a confrontational person from what I believe, from what I garner or gather. And, eventually he was looking for something like this. And, that's why he carried a knife in his pocket or carried a knife in his bag, because, he more than likely was prepared for a situation like this, where he thought that he was going to have to prove his masculinity, and that, he said that if anyone tries to fuck with me, or if anyone tries to do this, I'm going to stab him, or I'm going to kill him, or, I'm going to hurt him bad. But at the end of the day, this kid was looking for something, which is just very unfortunate. Not saying, once again, that Austin Metcalf should have necessarily tried to move him out of the way or force him out of the way, but the thing being is that that kid, obviously, he was looking for something.
Unimaginable.
A big question many of you are asking: how could a student get a stabbing weapon inside this district track meet? We know spectators often...
Well, because I'm not really quite sure if there's major security measures for a track meet. There might be now, but, is what it is.
Go through metal detectors. Athletes generally don't. We asked Frisco ISD about that, or if there were even metal detectors here Wednesday. A spokesperson telling us that more info will be released at a later date. In Frisco, I'm Matt Howerton.
But anyways, that pretty much is about it for today. I just thought that I would kind of review that. I thought the story was interesting. But the reason why I wanted to talk about that is because so many people are trying to frame it in a certain way. And you never know. Like I said, maybe, the kid, Metcalf, maybe he was a little bit of an entitled bully in certain degrees. But do I believe that this was a case of, to where these two had a whole bunch of history and this kid was fearing for his life? No. I think that, once again, that Metcalf probably should have not touched the man, and that, he should have just let it go or told a teacher about it if he was that concerned about it. But he probably, thought that he had to prove his masculinity, or, was used to overall, getting his way, maybe because he was a high level athlete. One of the two, maybe I'm wrong about that, but, I don't know. But if I had to guess, more than likely, he felt that he had to prove his masculinity right there because Carmelo was probably talking a bit reckless. And then, that ended up happening. Very unfortunate. But that's why, man, it's important, first of all, not to worship the thug life, because that shit will bring you nothing but harm, you and others. And then on top of that, it'll ruin your life and your success that you could possibly have. Now, Carmelo Anthony, he's going to have no scholarships later on, and neither, of course, is Austin Metcalf. Very unfortunate. But, is what it is. But anyways, very unfortunate situation. But once again, what I believe happened more than likely is that Anthony probably went under the tent. Not sure if he was there to cause a specific argument or if he knew somebody there. Austin Metcalf probably told him to move because he's not from our school. Either A, once again, he was a little bit entitled and was used to getting his way because he was a top tier level athlete. Or B, he was trying to do the right thing, and, Carmelo was talking a bit reckless, and he thought that he had to prove his masculinity. But either way, of course, it does not warrant a complete knife to the chest, because I'm sorry, there was just nothing that I seen in here that warranted, complete life threatening. There just wasn't. So this at the very least is going to be manslaughter, as it should be, pretty much shut open and closed case, in my view. But anyway, but that pretty much is about it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later, and we'll see what happens about this.